Bitch is a Bad Word podcast is for informational purposes only and reflects the opinions of the host and guests. It contains explicit content and discusses sensitive topics such as domestic abuse, sexual assault, and violence, which may be distressing to some listeners. Please take care of your emotional well-being while listening. While we strive for accuracy, we make no warranties about the completeness or reliability of the information, and any reliance on it is at your own risk. We do not endorse third-party views and are not liable for any defamatory claims. Listeners should conduct their own research and consult professionals before making decisions. If you or someone you know is in danger, please call 911 or contact the National Domestic Abuse Hotline 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at 800-799-7233 or text START, S-T-A-R-T, to 88788. We've got your back, besties. Caliber Studios has not independently verified the information you're about to hear. Reality isn't always what it seems. It's what you make of it. Sons of Anarchy actress Ali Walker debuts her electrifying new thriller, The Light Runner, on June 6th at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. But our bestie gang can pre-order it now at aliwalkerofficial.com. She's a baddie. She's your new bestie, and we've got her back. Go visit her website, aliwalkerofficial.com, and pre-order The Light Runner now. Welcome back to this episode of Bitch is a Bad Word. I am so excited to have our guest on today, Josh Connelly. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here, and I'm excited. Looking forward to the conversation.
Oh my gosh, so am I. I found you on Instagram, which I guess that's where we all find each other these days. And I'm fascinated by your knowledge of narcissism and specifically in parents. So I want to kind of unpack that for our listeners. Let's talk about this word. We're hearing it kind of slung everywhere, and it's kind of reminding me of the old days when people used to just be like, oh, they're a psychopath, they're crazy, or like, you know, we're sort of like haphazardly using these terms. And when we say them so much, then people are like, okay, I'm tired of hearing this word narcissist. What does it actually mean? So if you want to share with us your interpretation of what a narcissist looks like, and then how that would affect anyone growing up with one.
Yeah. So look, I think it's interesting, but I agree with you with the use of the word, right? It sort of, in some ways, almost gets like fetishized in some ways, right? And then it gets sort of thrown around and overused and misrepresented, and that's why, to be honest with you, I often use the word toxic as a bit more of a broader term. So that because I think that we can sometimes then get bogged down and lost in terminology, and we forget that words are actually, in a lot of cases, just ways to try and describe something complicated or something complex. I think that particularly narcissist, abusive people will latch on to certain things to hold on to power, and one of them is the overuse of the word narcissism. So a narcissist will usually be one of the main people that are sort of peddling that narrative that it's overused and everybody's a narcissist now. So like I try not to get too weighed down by terminology, but in terms of the type of parent that I'm describing or that I'm talking predominantly about, we are ultimately talking about narcissism, right? But we're talking about somebody who consistently, right, I think is a really key word here, consistently and always only really cares about their supply. They only really care about themselves being at the center of the universe in any which way that they can make that happen, right? And so every interaction that they have with anybody and everybody is driven solely by the notion of keeping themselves at the center of, I say the universe, but the center of theirs and everybody else's story. That would be the short version.
I like that you use the term toxic. We had Nadine Macaluso on the show, and
Hmm.
she obviously was married to one of the most notorious narcissist, Jordan Belford. So she uses the term pathological person,
Hmm.
and once I heard that, it sort of kind of clicked a lot of things that I've experienced in my own childhood, in my own relationships, and pathological people do pathological things.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's like, as you're saying, there's somebody in the center of their own universe. Everything is based off of, their meeting their needs or getting what they want and whatever lengths that they'll go to achieve those goals. It's a really complicated person for a child to be attached to,
Hmm.
because, we all know that the children need to be the center of the world at the beginning, or always, or like they need to be the focus. And so there must be some sort of push and pull between a toxic, narcissist, pathological person, what have you, trying to care for a baby while ultimately wanting their needs met as well, or their children. Or so would it be like being raised by a narcissistic person?
Well, I think the first thing I would say, just building on what you've just said, is that the parent-child relationship is the perfect relationship for the toxic type of person that we're talking about, right? So, like, it is the perfect relationship because you have an instant imbalance in power, right? So if let's call them for ease, I'm going to keep referring to them as toxic people,
Yep.
right? But
Okay.
if a toxic person is trying to enter an adult relationship with somebody else, they need to put in a little bit of legwork, right? In order to first gain ultimate trust so that they can then manipulate that trust into more of a reliance upon them, right?
Mm-hmm.
That, then you have like the love bombing and all of that kind of stuff. And then they get themselves into a position of power by abusing trust. Then they're able to kind of set about doing the things that they need to do. There is perhaps not many relationships where that imbalance of power is already there. So when you're a child, when a child is born, one of its biological needs is to attach to their parent. And so the child will do whatever it takes in order to attach to the parent. So it's like giving these toxic people a piece of Play-Doh and saying, make exactly what you need. And this piece of Play-Doh will morph into exactly what you need. Exactly what you need. And so, like in that instance, they're perfect. So, they become everything that this toxic person needs, often until normally around the teenage years, yeah, in most instances. And it's around the teenage years where a lot of the sort of tactics that would normally have worked very, very easily and very, very simply, uh, the person starts to develop a more full sense of self, starts to realize their own power that they have in their life and all of that kind of stuff. And so that's when the tactics will change and you'll start to see a lot of like jealousy and a kind of lashing out from the toxic parent to the child is when they reach their teenage years. Yeah.
I mean, I would imagine because the child is forming their own opinion.
Hmm.
Their opinion on the world may not align with the parent, or, they see the manipulation perhaps for what it is. There's a lot of times I've been thinking about and hearing that you watch a child grow up, and so you can easily control them. Like you're saying, you can, like, here's a toy, here's ice cream. I treated you like shit, but don't worry, I'm going to give you something. And, there's like a lot of confusion, I would imagine, for a child growing up, trying to meet the needs of a parent. Because that's basically what I'm understanding, right? Like is it the child's responsibility to meet the needs of the adult toxic parent?
Yeah. Well, you start to get emotional sort of enmeshment, right? So what starts to happen is like, so look, in a normal functional family environment, right? When a child is born, they start to develop their sense of self in those initial years, and they do that under the loving gaze of a parent, right? And the parent shows and communicates to that child as their brain is developing that I love you in, every single part of who you are. When you're happy, sad, lonely, jealous, rageful, I'm here just mirroring back love at you. And so you develop a healthy sense of self because you explore what works for you, and you recognize that you're loved in all of them. And then so you start to morph and become the person that you're supposed to be. If you're growing up with a toxic parent, of course, then what they're doing is already only trying to get their needs met. So the child then starts to get the message that I am not lovable in all of who I am. Like, what makes me lovable is how useful I am and how much I meet my parents' needs, right? So if you grow up in that environment, kind of codependency is going to be like strong in you, right? Because you're going to get the sense that what makes me lovable is how good I am and how hard I work to make you feel good, which of course is not what love should be based on, right?
No, not at all. And so it's all conditional. Like a toxic parent's love is conditional, whereas a normal, healthy parent's love, I'm hearing from what you're saying, is unconditional.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And so you learn that love is conditional, because the key thing to remember as well is that, like, particularly for the first 4 to 9 years, right? Your parents are like God to you, right? And it takes most of us a long time into our adulthood. Most of us still, irrespective of how functional the family environment was that you grew up in, you still have these little moments where you realize that, like, something that your parents told you might not actually be fact, right? I always joke that my mum always used to say you should never get in water after you've eaten, right? So she wouldn't let us have a bath after dinner, because she said, like, if you get in the bath after dinner, right, it will make you sick. And so I would never do that. And it wasn't until I was like an adult and like in a relationship with somebody else, and I was like, oh no, you can't get in the bath after you've had dinner. And then you realize, like, oh, that's just something that my mum told me when I was a child, and it became my common belief. And that's like silly, kind of funny anecdote. But if you imagine that you're getting that same messaging around who you are as a person, what makes you lovable, what's going to make other people want to be around you, right? And it's all based around emotional enmeshment and sort of like me only ever meeting your needs. You can see how problematic that's going to be for you in your adult relationships,
1,000,000%. I mean, you've been raised by somebody who sees you as like a thing that's either inherently good or inherently bad. I see a lot in my relationships with toxic people in particular that there is no middle. There's no gray. It's very just like, you're good, bad, right, wrong. There's no real room for the like possibility that, oh, perhaps this happened because, like, there's no exploring just like that middle space.
Because there's no autonomy, right? So like, for me to have autonomy, for us to sit and have this conversation, we're two separate people bringing together two different ideas. I'm very aware of where I end and you start, right? But as a child of a toxic parent, and it's probably true in toxic relationships as well, they see you as an extension of themselves. So you don't know where you end and where somebody else begins. You don't know when you're feeling your feeling, or where you're feeling somebody else's feeling, and in this case your parents' feeling, because you've had to become so in tune with them, because that's how you survive as a child, right? That's how you live, is meeting the very needs of that person. So what you're talking about there, that no gap, it's because you become so blended, so enmeshed with your parent, right? And then as a child in this situation, you then take that into your adult relationships too. You just become enmeshed with everybody that you get in a relationship with.
Are there any statistics that say, like, are you guaranteed to either be a codependent or a narcissist, or,
I don't know. Look, I couldn't give you any statistics, but normally what happens is that the children will take on different roles. So, like, in order to protect the system, you have to take on a different role. The reason you have to take on a role is because more so than in any other relationship, when you're a child, it's not even safe to be able to admit that you're in that kind of relationship, right? If a 5-year-old realizes, oh my God, my mom or my dad is toxic and abusive, there's nothing that they can do about it, right? So they have to find a way to survive in that system. So they'll start to play a role. So you'll have like the golden child who does really, really well and will get treated favorably as a result. And then you often have the scapegoat who tends to be the one who sort of speaks the truth a little bit and calls things out. And so they'll be scapegoated. You're the reason that we're all struggling within this family system. So depending on what role you took when you were a child within that system will likely depend on a lot of things really in your adulthood. So you also have the mascot child, right? So the mascot child is the one that makes everybody in the family happy and makes them laugh. The whole family looks to them to, when they're all down, they look to the mascot, and the mascot be silly and like the class clown, the joker, and they keep the family happy. So the mascot is much more likely to go on to have problems with things like alcohol or any kind of stimulant-based drug, because they're so used to having to be on the go all the time and making everybody happy, right? So that's going to aid them when they reach that age. The golden child, who's used to being the good one and the family that must be doing all right because look how well these are doing, they go on to be addicted to work, overachievers, think that success is the sign of how well they're doing in life. And so they're going to get lost in their job, right? And in their job role and stuff like that. So there are like pretty clear patterns. And if you grew up in any kind of dysfunction, really, most people can put a bit of a finger on which role they played in the house they grew up in. Yeah.
What does the scapegoat turn into?
The scapegoat is often a bit of a truth seeker. So the scapegoat will tend to take that role within society and will call out, call out bullshit when it sees it. Be a bit of a truth seeker, will probably be a bit of an outlier, a bit of a rebel. But I would argue that we live in a toxic and abusive system and an abusive structure. So they'll do the same within society, right? Society is very much like an abusive family, right? Mm-hmm. We have a huge imbalance of power that we feel like we are not really given much choice of, like a child. When you reach adulthood, you go into the system where there's a massive imbalance of power. The people with the power abuse it, and all the ceilings, so people of society argue amongst another. And they normally do within the same role as they had in their childhood, right? You'll have a bunch of golden children saying, well, the system's not that bad because I did pretty well. And then the scapegoats will be going, well, yeah, but look at this. Can't you see this abuse? And the golden child doesn't see it, doesn't want to see it because they don't need to see it. So the patterns play out everywhere, yeah.
That is so fascinating. I mean, we're in one big dysfunction in society. I mean, especially now. And it's great.
Yeah, but it is. It's we live in a highly dysfunctional society where, in the main, and this happens in all forms of abuse, right? Mm-hmm. When you wake up to the abuse that you've experienced, one of the things that you're going to realize, which feels bizarre when you wake up to abuse, is that most people don't actually want to look at, talk about, and explore abuse. They want you to shut up about it. Mm-hmm. And that is the bigger proportion of people would rather you shut up or you be the quote unquote bigger person and stop going on, put it in the past, leave it. It's absolutely fascinating. The lengths that the general person within our society will go to in order to sweep abuse under the carpet. And I mean, like real, all abuse is heinous, but like real heinous abuses we see it all the time in society. It gets swept under the carpet. So it's sort of, again, when you live in dysfunction, that's what happens. People don't want to look at the quite how bad the abuse is. So they will choose to sweep it under the carpet and scapegoat anybody that calls it out.
It's true. And then you have a big lumpy fucking carpet, all this going on. And what's interesting, I want to touch on that for just a second. It is the toxic person, the abusive person, the person that's doing this heinous stuff. They can flip it on you. Like, look what you've done, because you're calling it out. Now you are the problem. You've done this. And I've been kind of writing lately, just sort of journaling things. And I came up with this like thought that, in my situation, I no longer was the good victim because I started talking about it. So coming out made me bad. And that's where that's why I kind of feel like I'm either good or bad. And I'm good if I'm shutting up about it and I'm not talking about it. And I'm bad doing what I'm doing. I'm bad bringing it up. And it's like that is conflicting, for myself personally. I would imagine it's conflicting for anybody because you're going, well, hold on a minute. Why am I not allowed to share what has happened to me? It's happened to me, therefore it's mine. But they don't want that. And they'll do gaslight the hell out of everything, no, it's not. Look over here. It's like this crazy tactic to get you to scare you. First of all, they're really big bullies. And to they don't want to talk. Okay, it's in the past. Move on. Well, that's fascinating to me. That's to protect their image, give them the freedom to keep doing it. I don't know what the reasons are.
Yeah. And an abusive person will, over a prolonged period of time, and before before the person they're abusing is being open about the abuse in any way, they're going to go around and try and tarnish your credibility from day one, right? Mm-hmm. And people think that toxic and abusive people, for a start, they think that they're going to look a certain way, right? And they think that they're all sort of hanging about in sordid places, right? But I'll tell you where most of them are hanging about, and I don't want to be too controversial, but I just believe it to be true. Most of these toxic, horrible people that we're talking about are hanging about in the charity sector and in spiritual communities, right? Because they hide. They don't all go and hang out in openly abusive places. Mm-hmm. They hide. They wear cloaks. And so then, when they are trying to tarnish your credibility, they're doing it by, I'm just a bit worried. I'm just a bit worried about them. If it was you to be like, I'm a bit worried about Lindsay and she's acting a little bit strange at the moment. Have you noticed anything? So now they just seem like caring people who are just concerned about you, right? Mm-hmm. And so then when you start to have appropriate reactions to the abuse that you're experiencing, everyone goes, oh yeah, they were saying that they're losing their mind a little bit, and look, they are losing their mind now. And that's how they rip away your support systems, and then they make out that you're the crazy one. And then what happens is society then goes, generally speaking, well, you're the one acting crazy. The person you're saying is the abuser is still going about being charitable, and they seem nice and they're not saying anything. So it's ridiculous how easy it is to make an abuse victim seem like they're crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you see that again. You see that in popular culture, particularly. You see it play out time and time and time again when somebody speaks openly about abuse, rather than being listened to, held, and believed. What they're saying is picked to pieces, and their credibility is picked to pieces. And so it's no wonder people stay quiet.
Ooh, it is. It's no wonder, because exactly what you said, these people are hiding in plain sight. They are smear campaigning, doing whatever they can say. And I mean, you kind of, when someone's telling you that you're not, that your truth is not true, you feel very, this is the hill I'm going to die on. You're like, no, this didn't happen. This is my truth. This is how I believe, and I'm going to stand on the truth. And in a normal functioning system or society, you can stand on the truth, and it's a pretty solid ground. And and you feel like this has happened. This is real, and I'm allowed to share it, and I'm going to share it. When someone tells you that you're lying, that you're wrong, again, they cherry pick it. They're able to pick, the one thing you said, and then you have a natural reaction to being told you're lying about something, in every fiber of your being true, you're going to react like that, and then you do look crazy. You're like, I need everybody to hear that, this, and then that person, because what is it? Are they lacking empathy? What's the reason that they're able to be just so calm and like a freaking Zen master while you're truly feeling the feelings?
Yeah, well, they're very calculated in what they do, right? They're very calculated in all of that. The passive aggressiveness or the passive aggression in these people, like knows no bounds. You know what I mean? And people really misunderstand like how subtle passive aggression can be. You know that they like, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm sort of being too out there or too sort of woo woo,
Mm-mm.
but there is a manipulation of energy that happens with these people. A toxic and horrible person can say something lovely, amazing, really nice to you in front of everybody else in a way that they know that you and you only, it might be a subtle change in the way they look at you, a subtle change in the facial expression, the tone, something like that. And they'll say it. And then when you call it, if you call it out, they'll be like, what the? I just told you that I thought you looked nice in that. And you're like, yeah, but you said it like that. And then they're like, I never, like, I just don't. And then, so then you're like, I'm crazy. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm crazy. And then, so what happens is, with that gaslighting, that kind of subtle manipulation of energy and tone and facial expressions and all that kind of stuff, what that starts to do then is make the person that they are abusing become almost entirely reliant on their abuser for what is true in their life. And that's a huge imbalance of power. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because now, not only do I think I'm crazy, but the only person I go to in order to check if I'm crazy is the one who is making me feel like I'm crazy.
I mean, you can't even, you can't, you're just wound up in some, like, you're in that vortex then. Because
Exactly.
that's the vortex. And that's where the feeling of feeling crazy is real. Like, and it's an uncomfortable feeling. And like, you start gaslighting yourself. And you're like, did it happen? Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe, I start to key in on people. Like if I start hearing people talk about the crazy ex, I'm like, that's my like signal. I don't know that I'm going to believe the next few things that you're going to say about that person. Because most people don't run around smearing people, right? But when you go to your abuser, and usually, and then that cycle of abuse is so important because like the cycle can last 5 minutes or 5 years or, 5 days. You never know. And so when they're love bombing you and they're telling you at some point, listen, you overreacted. You're crazy. It didn't happen that way. I'm going to distort your reality. This isn't, you maybe, you were kind of tired. You were drinking. You were like whatever they're going to use to distort the reality that then you start doubting yourself. It's usually in that moment is when they start being love bombing you again. And then they're in that nice phase and the charming phase. And then you're like, oh, well, maybe look how nice they are. They're being so great. And then that's going to last for only so long because they have to do that to manipulate you again. And to get that, like, I'm imagining the second they feel like they're losing their power is when they have to like adapt and become charming again. Cause you're not going to stay with somebody who's just being an asshole all the time.
No, but in the early phases of that relationship is where all of the real legwork goes in, right? And they will already have like pulled you away from your support systems in one way or another, whether it's making you not trust the people that are close to you, whether it's making you feel like being around those people is not fair on them, or it's like does something to you, like I love you, but when you're with those people, you change. Like, I just don't like the person that you become. You act to anything to first to rip away your support system so that you're entirely reliant upon them. So that once you're entirely reliant upon them, then actually they can be quite horrible to you because they've managed to get you to a place in your life where you believe that one, when things are bad, it's because of you,
Mm-hmm.
So like, and they'll do that in a loving way. We need to get you some help. Like, I'll come to the doctors with you. Let me come to the doctors with you because like, this isn't you. This is not you. You're not this crazy person that I see. And like, you can see how when you've had your support systems ripped away, you've been like made to feel like you're like completely in love. You can see how, and then whenever anything's bad or wrong, it's your fault.
Mm-hmm.
You can see how, this imbalance of power is already there. It already exists. And it's like, it's almost like really difficult for people to understand. And in a lot of cases, like the emotional abuse that happens is, I like say it's like death by a thousand cuts, because you try and describe it in isolation to people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they did this, and then they're like, well, yeah, that doesn't sound great, but it's not that bad, And then, and you show anybody one of the thousand cuts, and they'll say, stick a plaster on it, like there's nothing wrong with you, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's almost impossible. And then if you start trying to explain the thousand cuts to them, you actually start to come across as a bit hysterical, right? So you're just stuck. You're locked in this system. And when it's a parent, it's you get the whole, you only get one mum and dad, you'll miss them when they're gone, they're your mum or your dad, you should love them no matter what. And so look, I think in abusive relationships, you always have to look at the imbalance of power. That's why there becomes an imbalance of power in relationships as well, not just in the parent-child relationships. There becomes the imbalance of power, in normal relationships too. So yeah, it's horrendous.
It's horrendous.
When you talk
yeah.
about it,
It is. And then you think about like a child that's been in a pathological family with a toxic parent, a narcissist, what have you. When they meet that person in their adult life, that person feels familiar.
Yeah.
And in my experience, that's how I grew up. And so when I met someone that was reminded me of home, but in a really in my fucked up home, like in my really, like, it was hard for me to understand, but I'm like, well, this feels familiar. You're groomed. I feel like there's a lot in that love bombing stage that I look back on it now, and it's like they seemed so engaged and so curious and so wanting to understand everything about me. But I think they were calculating. I think they were like studying and researching so that they could mirror some of the things that, that I were important to me, that they could just flip later. But I felt like, looking back on it now, it was very much research and put everything into the vault. Tell me all of your deep, darkest secrets, your fears, your everything. And I'm going to seem like home to you. And then I'm going to weaponize your vulnerabilities at some point down the line. And when you share a vulnerability with somebody and then they use it against you later, that's one of those 1,000 cuts.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a big one of them as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So that, like you say, that initial stage, like in the relationship, and it's one that's, when it's a parent-child relationship, you don't need to do that, right? Because it just happens. It happens because it happens, because that's what happens. And then so in the adult relationships, and I would also argue that, like, if you've grown up in that kind of dysfunction, you probably had to work hard for love, right? And you thought that love is about how, like, you learn that love is, how do I get you to love me? Not how do I share myself with you and let's see if love comes, or let's see if there is love there. Let me show you who I am and see if you like it. And if you don't, then that's cool. And, I'll move through life. And I know my core belief about myself is that I'm lovable. So it doesn't matter if you love me or not, because I know that I'm lovable and somebody will come along that does love me. But if you've grown up in that environment, you don't have a belief that you're lovable. You are constantly, desperately going out looking for somebody who will let you work really, really hard and show how much you love them so that they love you back, because that's what love is to you, right? So if you end up, I don't know, on a date or in the early part of a relationship where somebody isn't working really, really hard to make you love them, and you're not doing the same, then it probably just feels boring and a bit strange. Like, why? We're out on a date. You've told me I've told you some of the things about me, and you've just been like, oh, that's cool. I'm not really into that, but it sounds interesting. I'd love to hear more, right? Which is normal. You want, oh, you're into that. Like, oh my God, I literally dreamt last night that I would meet somebody that was into that. And here, you know what I mean? So like, if you're desperate, if you're really keen to find somebody to work hard for, to be loved, then you're likely to fall foul to these people. And look, the key thing, by the way, the key learning out of that is, because a lot of people will say, oh, I feel like I attract toxic and abusive people. You don't. Toxic and abusive people will throw out the signals everywhere. And if you're boundaried and you're like, you don't give anything away, they won't stick around long at all. Because you can't be a supply to them. They're gone. Early doors, they're gone. If you've got decent boundaries and you're clear with your boundaries early doors, right? That should be attractive to a normal person, and it will make an abusive person go away. So you can't really lose if you learn to do it and you do some of the work so that you can have clear boundaries. Somebody that respects them and is attracted to the fact that you have clear boundaries, right, is somebody you probably want to be with. And the abusive people will go because they'll get a sense that you can't be a supply for them. So they're not interested.
I love that. Okay, we're going to take a little break. And when we come back, I want to talk more about the steps you can take to build boundaries around yourself and how you can become, that fortress. We'll be right back. Since we've launched, we have had an outpouring of emails and DMs from listeners sharing their real, raw, and tragically relatable stories of domestic abuse. We keep reading one common theme. Our show is helping you feel seen. Your ex used to do that all the time, and maybe I'm not crazy. You're not. You've just been living in a silo, and your support system has been stripped away systematically over time, and we want to help you build it back. We are building the biggest, baddest, bestie gang, and we're doing it on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/bitchesabadword and come check out all the awesomeness that we've got going on. We have a $4 tier that will give you early access to ad-free episodes, 10% discounts on merch, some exclusive Patreon member-only merch designs, and we are designing some really rad stuff that you're going to want to rock. We also have a little segment called Tea with Lindsay, where I'll be spilling all the best tea from your bestie. We have an $8 tier that gives you all of those things, an additional 15% merch discount, and access to our exclusive Discord server. We are vetting every single member, so our besties can go in and feel safe to share their stories, find their voices, rebuild their network. And if you're being financially monitored or money's just tight, no worries. We've been there. We've got you. We are going to make it so that other Patreons can gift a membership so everyone can go in and find the bestie they need. We're also going to be doing some behind the scenes stuff, and we're just going to be growing it over time, and we cannot wait for you to join. So come find us on patreon.com/bitchesabadword, and let's get this going. Let's build this bestie gang. We've got your back. We'll see you on Patreon. Welcome back, besties. We have Josh Connelly with us today, and we are talking about pathological, toxic, narcissistic people, parents, boundaries, all the things that, all the things in this space. Because I really love how he started this conversation, saying, like narcissism is just being thrown around, and like to expand the view to like, this is a toxic person. And I've heard you say a couple times supply, and what is a supply, first of all, and how can you, and we'll go back to building boundaries, but I hear this a lot. And so I want to break that down for someone listening. What does it mean to be a supply?
So we talked a little bit about how they see you as the extension of themselves, right? Every interaction that these people have is about them, right? So, and how, like, one way you can keep yourself as the center of the universe is to be grandiose and to believe that you're the best thing in the world and that everybody should be grateful to be around you. And there'll be people out there that will, buy into that. You can do that by being extravagant and lavish, all of that stuff. And then another way that you could do it is by creating drama that you're at the center of. Yeah. I could bring you into drama, make myself the victim always of the center of that drama. And that's the one that I talk a lot about, because I think it's the one that's almost harder to spot. And so when I'm talking about a supply, these people want the drama, right? They want to perpetuate their own victimhood. They want to be the center of this story. And if they can create a big drama-ridden story that brings you in, where they can, you're trying to work out what's going on and you're in battle with them and you're trying to rationalize stuff and all of that, it's brilliant. They are at the center of, because they do, right? And anybody that's been the victim of this, you'll know your abuser becomes the center of your universe. They can send you one of their big, long text messages that goes on. It's like a massive word salad full of stuff from years ago and questions from now, half truths, complete lies. And you can read it and think, I'm not going to respond. And your whole day, at least day, is consumed pulling apart this. How can they? There's no way that happened. And so even if you don't go back, the moment you read it, they are the center. They are the center of your house, your world, your universe. Yeah. They're the center of it. And that is, you are their supply. That's what it means.
That is exactly how it is, because you're a normal person. So you're affected by the shit that they're saying that isn't real. So you're like you're going, what? Like this didn't happen. It's like saying, like, if you're standing outside looking at the moon and someone's telling you that it's sunshine, you're like, no, I'm looking at the moon. No, well, are you? Is that the moon? It looks like the sun to me. And you're like, what? No, that's the fucking moon. And then you're sitting there, you're crazy. I'm going to bed. And then you're sitting there going, I don't remember, like, what? And that word salad's important. And the whole time you look at it, we say on the show, DNE, do not engage, do not engage. But that's hard. That is a really hard thing to do. It's a boundary that you need to have, especially if you're like in a relationship with someone or co-parenting with someone, or it is a parent. And to be able to say, like, I can't look at anything that they're sending it's not easy to do. And it's not even really reasonable. But the second you open it, you're like, I've just opened Pandora's box and now my whole day is fucked.
Yeah. Once you open it, like you say, the day's gone. And then before you know it, you're pulled in, use the sun being the moon example that you're given. Then you start going, you'll argue for ages in your head about whether it's the sun or the moon. And like, how can they say that it's the sun? It's clearly the moon. And then you'll go, right. Let me just rationalize. Right. Okay. I don't care if it's the sun. I don't care if it's the sun. Maybe if I just say to them, I couldn't see it properly because the clouds, then maybe they'll see it from my point of view and that'll finish this. And then we'll be all right. And so you give a massive bit of yourself away with the false belief that they'll be reasonable, or that you can bring any kind of sane rationale to what they're doing, because you can't. And so when it's like a parent, it's a layer, particularly when you're trying to parallel parent, with a person like this. Yeah. Because we all know you can't co-parent with them. You parallel parenting. Yeah. There's actually a company here called Neutrally in the UK. And what they're actually doing now is using AI and humans, so that if you're in a co-parent relationship, the person that you are co-parenting with, doesn't get access to you. So if they want to WhatsApp, because what they'll do, is say, like, I don't know, pickup time is 4:30 on Friday. They'll use the fact that they're going to be there 5 minutes late as a reason to text you. And it will say, I'm going to be there 5 minutes late. But then it will have, because obviously, you didn't pack this in their bag and so they know what they're doing, right? And this company Neutrally has got this really clever thing where they can send their big word salad and it goes to them, to the company. They use a human coupled with AI to neutralize the message. And so they'll take all the word salad away, and then you'll just receive a message that says, it'll be 4:35 instead of 4:30, because they take away all of that crap. Yeah.
Oh, so you never even see it.
So you never see it. You don't engage with them. And it's because what happens when you're co-parenting with a toxic, horrible person like this, there might be medical issues, right? They might have the children for the weekend. And so, they'll, the child's sick, so I need to text you. So then they're going to text you. And it's not just going to be, look, I'm just letting you know that the child's poorly, right? It's going to be like, child's poorly. I reckon it's probably something that you did last week, but that's okay, cool, because I'm a really nice parent or whatever. And you know what they do? And it's this message that, like, again, like we said, like we talked about, it's this word salad stuff. So yeah, this company is doing this thing here, which I think is really
That is
clever.
so cool.
Yeah. And you can see how anybody that's in that situation, because ultimately you want to go complete no contact, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you've got children with them, you just in most cases you can't.
No, you can't. And the parenting apps, I mean, I have one, and the parenting app is, you still get notification, and then you still get everything they say. And let's be real, you're not, it's like, oh, it's reported to the court. Well, no, it's not really reported to the court. It's just sort of put together. You can pull a report and you can bring it to court, but that takes effort, and you're still seeing the same stuff. And at the end of the day, they don't care. So like, well, I didn't really mean it that way. And you're still, it's still there. And in my situation, I'm like, can we please use the app? Oh, well, the app gives me PTSD. So I don't, can we not use the app? Let's try to be civil. And then you're like, well, I can't force you to use the app. And if we have to communicate about something with the kids, like you said, you're opening yourself up for these word salads. So I love that app. Like, you don't even see it. No contact would be amazing. There's days like I count down like how many years until I don't have to communicate with this person on anything.
Yeah.
And that makes it, it's exhausting.
But the awful thing about that, sorry, just quickly, what the awful thing is that you end up wishing your kid's life away.
Yeah.
Because you're like, I can't wait until they're 18 so that I don't have to have contact with them. And so like, that's awful for anybody to be thinking, I can't wait till that happens. But the advice I give to everybody that is trying to co-parent with a person like this, you have the pick up time and you have the drop up time, and you never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, do you ever change that. Either way, you do not change it, and you do not change it for 5 minutes. Either way, ever, you stick to that plan. There's no reason apart from death that the plan ever changes. And yes, they're going to be going around saying, you're being completely unreasonable. I just wanted to pick them up half an hour later, look, and they won't even engage. They won't even let me pick them up half an hour. I just want to co-parent and be a bit of give and take. You have to let go of all of that. And you give no favors, you take no favors, you stick to that time, and then you have no contact around anything. And it's flat all of the time. No, the time is half full. That is it. If you're not there, then this is your fault. That's it. And you never deviate from that, because any deviation is an opening to the supply. And that's the only way you can do it. And it might not sound ideal, but you have to, I believe, let go of the fantasy. And I'm being almost harsh on purpose. You have to let go of the fantasy that you're ever going to be able to co-parent in the way that you've seen a couple of people on Instagram do it, right? Mm-hmm. You're not in a relationship like that. You're not with somebody sane, rational. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So you have to do the best. And that is that, this gray rock kind of never deviate. It's the only way that will work.
That is such valuable, and you need to be harsh because that's what it needs to be. And I've seen too, and I fantasized about, well, of course we could all have shared birthday party or a shared thing. Like, why do we need to have two? It doesn't work. And I was reading something or listening on Instagram or something about somebody sharing the experience. If you are in a relationship, a parallel parenting relationship with a toxic parent, and then you try to have, say, a shared birthday party, you're putting an extraordinary amount of pressure on the children because they don't know which personality they're supposed to be, because they're going to be different in your home and they're going to be different in their home. But with a toxic person in particular, they are like a massive anxiety conflict of like, well, my two parents who notoriously don't get along are now in the same room. So that's stressful. But B, I don't know who I'm supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And I don't like.
Yeah. And look, let's be clear about it. If you're the victim of abuse, you're the victim of abuse.
Yeah.
And to do shared bite means to go into a room with your abuser. Like, it makes no sense. Yeah. Like, it just makes no sense. And it's unfortunate and it's really sad in many ways. But the best opportunity and the best thing for everybody involved, including the children, is the very, very clear, fixed, firm boundaries, the grey rocking, and then never deviating from that. And then the opportunity for you to become a supplier. And by the way, what I will almost guarantee that you'll find is if they haven't yet, they will be out looking for somebody new because you'll stop being a supply for them.
Mm-hmm.
You'll stop being a supply for them.
And then your child comes home. So what's the boundaries we can build for ourselves and for our children? Like, I'm constantly hearing different messages. I'm always conflicted. Like, my child comes home and I'm like, how was your weekend? Like, yeah, great, amazing. I'm trying to be happy and, like, that sounds like a really good thing. And recently I've just been in something that was super bad. And some people are like, you can't tell the kids, like the kids were involved. So I'm going to have to talk about it. And so when they came back to me, I was as honest as I've ever been. And I said, what happened was not okay. And what happened was a lie. And, here's the truth. And I'm going to help you work through this. But for the first time in a very long time, I noticed my kids like relaxed, like, okay, we're talking about it. And then they within a few minutes, they said, we don't want to talk about it anymore. But being honest, like I feel like I've spent a lot of time protecting my kids, and I did this in my relationship, protecting them, falsely thinking I was protecting them from the abuse, but they were aware and they were in it. And I stayed longer than I should have because I thought I was protecting them. And then now that I'm not in it, I keep thinking I'm protecting them by not telling them the truth about the situations. But I don't know that that's healthy either. So
telling them the truth?
Yeah. Or not telling them the truth. So what do you think? Kids, like, they should hear the truth? Or
I think that when a child is being told something that doesn't stack up to what they're feeling, they'll know it's not true. And I say to everybody, you can not tell the kids the truth if you want, but they already know the truth. They know what's going on. Children are highly intuitive. Mm-hmm. They're highly intuitive. Children know what's going on. Somebody better tell them the truth, because if they don't, they'll come up with a story. And children are egocentric. So when they come up with a story, it won't be like, this is like a mum and dad thing. It will be, maybe if I was a little bit more funny or a bit more secretive, or maybe if I just lied a bit when I was with my mum, then maybe this wouldn't happen. So I think telling the truth. So when you hear a lie that's come from the other home, you say as the best you can, because sometimes you're going to flip, right? Mm-hmm. So sometimes you're going to flip. And when I say you, I'm talking the royal you. Yeah. I'm talking to everybody that's in this situation. Sometimes you're going to flip. You're going to go and you're going to say something nasty about the other parent. I think you should forgive yourself. I think you're a human being. But most of the time, you say, that doesn't sound quite like the truth to me. Here's what I believe the truth is. Neutral truth. And then you move on. If they want to talk about it, you talk about it. But I think you should always give children the truth. You should always give children the truth. And I believe, by the way, eventually, when they reach a certain age, they will realize what the truth is. The truth is, we know when we're being told the truth because what we're being told matches the way that we feel. And we know when we're not being told the truth because it doesn't match to the way that we feel. And that might sound simple, because it is simple in many ways. Mm-hmm. And so what the child will start to see as they start to get into their teenage years and into their adulthood is, I feel like this parent always gives me the truth. I feel safe around this parent. I feel like I can speak what feels like truth to me. There's not conditions, and there will be conditions in the other household. Many of them. And I think in most cases, if you can do that pretty well, and everybody's capable of that, I believe, most children will reach adulthood, and at some point they might pick the quote unquote wrong side initially, but eventually they'll come home to the truth. I believe that. Yeah. So I think the truth is right.
I love that. And the truth is easy. The truth is simple. Like I try to tell my kids that, when you kind of catch them and you're like, well, why is there a giant hole in the wall? And they're like, well, I'm like, guys, it's very easy to tell the truth. It's like, this is what happened. When you have to think about it, or you recall it, or you're coming from like a place, like the lie is hard. It's a really hard thing to hold and keep up with and keep going. I mean, I can't imagine a pathological person having to keep all the lies in check, like how,
Yeah.
like that. Eventually that's just a little bit, it's got to be too much to handle. So you've got these boundaries. I think what I'm hearing is if we're telling the kids the truth, they are going to start forming, their own boundaries, like their own beliefs of like I love how you say it's a feeling, like it doesn't align the feeling's not in alignment. And I feel like that helps grow that intuition, like intuitively, if someone like, when someone's having a go and like they're full of it, you're like, this doesn't feel good. So I love that. I love that. That's a great way to build a boundary for kids, so they understand like their truth seeking. And yeah, it's okay. Like it's okay to like stand up for yourself too, to say, guys, this didn't happen.
Yeah.
Is that something you think that would happen that way? I love that. So that's a great boundary. And then what do you think about therapy for kids? That like, do they have to go to specific therapy? Is there, should they go? Should they be journaling? Because there's like a lot of people that like you hear, well, the toxic person is going to use the therapist and, as for intel, or, they won't allow it, or, have you heard this happens?
Yeah, you got to be mad careful about it, right? Because if there's still 50-50 responsibility in terms of the eyes of the law, if you take a child to a therapist and the other parent finds out about it, then they will have every right to go in and speak to the therapist and get any information that they want out of them, right? So I think it has to be handled with great care. I think that any ways that you can give the children an extra space away from both parents is brilliant, with other nurturing adults. Yeah. I think that's like would be beneficial. And I think that if you can give as much consistency of love and consistency of truth as you can, I think good prevails. I grew up in an alcoholic home, right? My dad was a raging alcoholic, for want of a better term. It was quite easy when I got to my adulthood to realize that my dad smashing up the house was bad and that it wasn't good and that it probably had an effect on me, right? What was probably a bit more tricky is that I remember I used to come down in the morning and my mum would be trying to act like everything was okay. Don't worry, your dad was just a bit angry. It's not your fault. Don't worry. It's like, no, nothing's gone on. The TV's just fallen off or whatever. That's confusing, right? In an ideal world, and this is not a slant on my mum. I'm very close with my mum. She's an amazing woman. She was, had no support, and we were all the victims of domestic violence in that way, right? But if my mum could have said the next morning, your dad has an issue. He has a real bad problem. And what he done last night was not okay. And it makes perfect sense if you're scared. And he smashed some things up in the house. And what you're feeling is wholly appropriate. And you are probably scared. And the best I can, I'm going to be with you and let you talk about it. And it's not okay. And no adult or any human being should ever treat you in that way. You can see the difference here. If you take the two examples I've just given you, and you say which one of those children is going to grow up with a better chance at being a whole person, is the second one who's heard the truth. And this is why, by the way, I talk like I do on my social media. And some people give me stick for it. Oh, you seem angry. Why do you have to, why are you talking that way? And I'm like, because I'm sick and tired of dubbing my language down to protect the abuser's right to a second chance or whatever. Or, some people change. Honestly, I don't care. I don't care. What I care about is calling things what they are. When you've grown up in an environment where your reality was questioned and hidden and changed and falsified and it made out like it wasn't your reality, I think what you need in your life is somebody who dares to say the truth. And I think it's a societal issue. You know, we talk about boys and growing up to be men and, you know, the rise of Andrew Tate and all of these kind of things, right? And or whatever, however you want to frame it. We still don't live in a society where we just call things out and say, if somebody smashes a house up that's got other human beings in it when they're present, that is horrible. It's disgusting. It's not okay. And they need to be held accountable for it. But it's almost like the done thing is to go, well, let's, you know, maybe they could change and we should give them another chance. And listen, everybody should have more chances, but we should also start at calling things what they are very, very clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important for everybody involved. Yeah.
In your experience and in your opinion, the change is almost impossible, or it's possible, or don't stick around long enough to find out.
Here's what I think, right? I think you should judge everybody that you meet in your life, right? If I'm talking to my kids, my eldest daughter is 18 now. Yeah. If I was giving her advice on interactions that she had with people, I would say to her, trust your body. Trust your body. And if somebody shows you that they're not a very nice person, why are you going to stick around and wait to find out if they can? There's too many good people in the world to stick around with the bad ones. Now, I would like to think that I'm a product of somebody that changed. I went on to have problems with alcohol myself. I wasn't a very nice person. I got sober nearly 13 years ago and continue to work on myself to try and be a better person, right? I'm a product of the reality that some people change. But you know what else is also true? Some people don't. And how long are you going to stick around and wait in the hope that they do? And whose job is that? It's the job of the wider community, by the way. And there is plenty of ways to change. If you want to change, there is plenty of support out there. If you're somebody that has been a not a very nice person, there's loads of support. Go and do it. Go and change. It ain't the job of your partner, and it ain't the job of your kids, and it ain't the job of anybody else. It's the job of you. Go and find the support because it's out there. So yeah, people change. Some people don't. So again, this is the truth of it. And how long are you going to wait around allowing somebody to steal your sanity, steal your life, steal your peace of mind? How long are you going to wait around till they change? Because I mean, if I was talking to my 18-year-old daughter, I would say, don't wait the rest of the day.
Mm-hmm.
So why would I tell anybody else any different?
I love it. That's it. That's the truth. That's the wisdom. There's 8 billion people on the planet. It's okay to leave the first time.
Yeah.
When someone shows you who they are the first time, believe them.
Exactly. And by the way, some people go to me, yeah, but how do I know it's not just me being triggered by them? And to that I say, who cares? Who cares if it's a you thing? Like, who cares? On to the next one. Learn about it. But don't stick around. Like, we're not supposed to like everybody and be liked by everybody. We're supposed to be ourselves. Some people ain't going to like you, and you ain't going to like some people. It's okay to not like somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Move on. It's not like 8 billion people. Find your community. Find your tribe. Don't stick around trying to fix. There's too many good people out there, and the broken ones should be supported by the wider community. And when they're ready, they can come back fixed and changed.
I love it.
All we're talking about here is accountability.
Yeah.
And and I'm somebody who changed. I like to think I changed, yeah. But I had to go away and do it. I had to go away and do it. And I had 4 children when I got sober in 2012. And I believe some of their emotional struggles in my children are a result of the world I brought them to and the person I was when they were born. My daughter, who's 18 now, was 18 when I was born. Some of her emotional struggles are a result of who I was. Yeah. And so will I be in debt to her for the rest of my life? Absolutely, yes, I believe so. Do I need to show up and hope that I can be a safe space for her to come when she eventually goes on a healing journey that normally happens not when you're 18, maybe when you're mid 20s earliest. I hope I can be a safe space for her to do that. Like, accountability. I'm not saying I'm a nightmare still today. I'm not the best person on the planet. I just would like to think I'm accountable.
Cheers to that. And congratulations on your sobriety and being a man of integrity, really. I mean, you're owning your shit and making the change necessary. That's super cool.
Yeah.
We're flawed.
Thank
We're
you.
humans. We're flawed. And to
Exactly.
to recognize that's super cool. And to be there for your kids like that is what a beautiful feeling that you're giving them and you're creating for them. That's super cool. I love it. We're going to take a last break. When we come back, Josh is going to give us a tool for our bestie toolkit. We'll be right back.
I met him at my daughter's college graduation. I pictured being in a fight with him. He was my daughter's boyfriend. 20 days later, he took her life when she tried to break up with him. When Dating Hurts is the name of my podcast. I knew I could not bring Kristen back, but believed I could help others who became tangled up in dating abuse and domestic violence. My guests are domestic violence survivors. Who knows more about the toxicity, the entrapment, devious manipulation, the loneliness, the pain and suffering than brave survivors who live to tell about it? Their stories are raw, intimate, plain-spoken, deeply personal. For many, this is the first time they've told their stories in one place. Today's survivors want current victims to know there are ways to achieve freedom. There is a process that's safe, that this can happen to anyone, and that you are not alone. Join me and my courageous guests on the When Dating Hurts podcast. It's a series of lives being saved.
Welcome back, besties. We have got your new BFF, Josh Connelly. We haven't invited you into the club yet, and it's consent. You can agree to join or not. I'll tell you about it in a minute. But we are building a toolkit for our besties. So we've got our listeners who are, excuse me. We have listeners who are, we love to meet everyone where they are on their own journey, and specifically through and out of domestic abuse, parallel parenting, and trying to navigate life with the unhealed toxic person. And so we're building this toolkit that someone can come and listen to the show and be like, this is the one thing I need right now to help me on my journey. So what would be a tool that you could give us?
Look, I don't want to be too broad, but any somatic work, how can I frame this? I think you need to reclaim your body, right? And I don't mean that just people that have been physically abused. What I mean is you need to know where your body finishes and everybody else starts. For me, breath work has been one of the most incredible tools to be able to come back into my body. And I'm talking, in my case, conscious, connected style breathing that really brings me back into my body so that I know what are my feelings and I know what are your feelings. And so as a result of that, I know which feelings to take responsibility for. And I think that's why I say reclaim your body, because when you do that, you can be boundaried in that way. And then you can be in relationships, friendships, romantic relationships, whatever they may be, where you know where you finish and the other person starts, and you can allow one another, while supported, if need be, to be able to take responsibility for your own emotions and your own stuff.
Breathwork is awesome, by the way. I go to this place and they do this crazy, I haven't made it to a full 45-minute class, but I've done this 30-minute, and you do these really fast breaths in and out, then you hold your breathing and you don't need oxygen. And in those moments where you're not you don't have to breathe, and you hold your breath for what seems like 8 years, I start panicking. And I'm like, this is when I'm going to what if he forgets? What if he doesn't tell me that it's time to breathe again? And so
yeah,
I am really loving that. Okay, it's a trust thing. I go into like, I have PTSD massive from the abuse that I've lived through. And so in that moment, I'm like, something bad's really going to happen right now. And then when I take the early breath and then 5 seconds, not even goes by, and he's like, okay, breathe. Then I'm like, damn it, Lindsay, you didn't freaking do it. Like, and then I feel like I'm mad at myself. And then I'm like, well, that's not the point. But so I kind of go through like all of these emotions through these breath classes of like fear, disappointment. I have anxiety. And then at the third round, I'm like, just, you can do it. You can do it. And then there's like this pride that I was able to finish it. But I really have found that it takes me later into the day where I'm like, I feel the result of it.
Yeah.
And that's cool. Cause I'm like, okay, I'm calm. Cause I get like jumpy. I get reactive to like, oh my God, what's going to happen next? And I feel like that calmness and finding that place. And it's so cool. Like I'm glad you brought that up because so many people, like it's such a big tool for the toolkit is like understanding your body. I'm like, feel yourself, know where you end and someone begins. That's really great advice.
Yeah. Because when we talk about, a lot of people talk about being an empath, right? I would argue that like when we say being an empath, what we mean is we're sort of highly sensitive, right? So we're highly in tune with people. The issue is not that you're highly in tune with people. The issue is that when you sense what other people are feeling, you take responsibility for it. That's the issue. So if you can get the boundary installed where you're like, hang on a minute, what's this feeling? Oh, it's not mine. Oh, it's not my responsibility. Okay, so then you stop taking responsibility. With that boundary, then you're almost, being an empath doesn't really exist. You're just highly sensitive and well-boundaried because you're not taking responsibility for the other person's emotions. And at the beginning of doing that feels very, very crunchy, right? Because you're like, well, I can see this person's sad. I can't just leave them, right? But actually, when you go, I can be a safe person. I know that I create spaces that feel safe. If this person is ready to explore that sadness that I'm picking up on, they'll come to me because I'm showing that I'm open. Otherwise, it's not my responsibility. And in some ways, I would say, who the hell do I think I am to think I know what's good for everybody in this room? I barely know what's good for myself. So let me just get back to working on myself, being a safe person in a safe space, and they'll come if they want to. It's the best thing you can do for them and you.
And you don't have to fix everybody. You're running.
No.
And who are you to think that they are ready to be fixed?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We say this too with like women that are leaving abusive relationships. There's no right or wrong time and there's no shame. You're going to leave. I left many times. People leave and come back. It's average. We're 7 times. And like, you can't tell somebody, and you can see it. You can be like, this person is clearly in a horrible situation and you can't even tell that person it's time to go. So it's not, let's all like, imagine a world where we're all taking care of ourselves. And that's not selfish, right? That's the other thing. It's like, you hear a lot like, well, being selfish or self-care is selfish, but it's probably the greatest gift you can give your kids and your family is to be taking care of your shit.
The greatest gift I can give the people that I care about the most is to be so in tune with myself that when they come to me with their stuff, I don't deflect it, push it down or sweep it under the rug because I'm so at ease and at comfort with this thing that you're struggling with. I'm able to be there for you. That is it, Mm-hmm. And so I think any kind of somatic work, and I would argue, and at the risk of sort of, I'm the father of 4 girls, and at the risk of, what do they say, mansplaining, I do feel that societal pressures mean that women historically are not really allowed their anger, right? So I always say a young boy can get angry at school pretty regularly and it's seen as relatively normal. So it's like a boy throws a chair in a lemon at school. He can do that regularly. He might get removed from the class, but nobody's panicking, right? Mm-hmm. And I always say a young girl could throw a chair maybe 3 times before she's in front of a doctor and everybody's saying she must be crazy. You haven't seen how angry she is. So I think a lot of women have a tendency to have like particularly a teenager internal sort of oppressed and repressed, angry teenager. So any kind of somatic work that maybe involves like shaking and screaming to give you that opportunity to release what your body has probably been holding all these years. Again, that's true for all genders, but I think specifically, I think it's specifically true, particularly true for women. Yeah.
Because women have been told they're hysterical, like, oh, she's hysterical. Like, well, no, she's having a natural human reaction to something that's really, really horrible. It doesn't mean she's hysterical. I love that. That's so important because we're told like to stuff it down, and it has to go somewhere. And it's, we're very much encouraging people on the show. Like we've talked about reactive things, and we're very much like, you need to own it and work through it so that you don't explode and become the person that you're going to feel guilty about 5 seconds later or a second later.
Yeah. So try and create a space in your life where you can explode that is specifically for you to do that, so that you can bring, and you deserve it, by the way. I think this is the key thing to say, because women, particularly women, their emotions are pathologized very, very quickly. I mean, there's lots of studies. I don't know if you've seen them. I can maybe send them to you after the recording. But the links between women being medicalized who are in abuse, rather than actually sorting out the inherent structures that allowed abuse to continue. So, like, split personality disorder, it's like highly labeled. Women find themselves with that label like 75% more than men or something. I'm not going to state the statistics because I'll be wrong because I'm forgetting them. So scrap the 75%, but it's a high percentage. And then there's lots of research that show there are many, many women who find themselves with a diagnosis when actually what they are is being abused. And they end up at the doctors and they end up with a diagnosis. So we, women, we do this really weird thing actually where we say that it's sort of more normal, quote unquote normal, for women to do emotions, but that's not true. Women, like girls and women, are not you're sort of taught not to do any emotions big because it will be labeled. Yeah, a man can have an angry outburst and you might get an eye roll, but if a woman has an angry outburst, it's like, oh my God, what the hell is wrong? Right? As if it's more strange for that to happen. So I think you need a space to be able to appropriately release, probably generations of oppression as well, really, when you look at it.
Hi, I'm Sarah Wayne Callies, and I played Dr. Sarah Tancredi on Prison Break.
And I'm Paul Edelstein, and I played Agent Paul Kellerman on Prison Break. Please join us on our rewatch podcast, Prison Breaking, with Sarah and Paul.
We're going to have all kinds of guests and never-before-told stories, so follow us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can subscribe to our watch party on the link there. We can't wait to see you there.
And follow us on Instagram at Prison Break Podcast. See you there.
We have had just a few male guests, which I was so excited to have you on because I think that you offer just such an amazing perspective. Like you bring hope. Like there's good men. I can tell like there's good ones in the world. And we sort of trying to say this to women is like, again, 8 billion people in the world. There are people like the Josh Connollys of the world that are out there doing the work, that they're working on themselves, healing themselves so that you can be a better dad and partner and, friend, all the things. So find the men that are doing the work. That's it. And then we have this club. It's the BFFs. So bitches fighting for freedom. And we use the term, I've been called all the names and all the things. And so on my journey, it's like taking back the words that have been used to hurt me to say, this is my anatomy. We're going to flip the script. We're taking our power back in a lot of ways to say, you can't use these words. These words are bad, but they're also like, they mean, let's put the power back in it. So I'd like to invite you to the BFFs, part of this club, and you can be a bro fighting for freedom. But that's what I'm hearing from you is like, you're out there doing the work. You're speaking your truth. You're sharing your pain and your struggles with women, and that's super cool. So I'm like honored to have you. If you'd like to join, please do. And we want you back on the show again as well.
I'd love to. What is it, like an actual community? You got like a community space for it as well? Or?
So we're growing it like on like Patreon and Discord. And so we're like really growing this community. And, we invited John Bernthal into the Bros Fighting for Freedom, and he's accepted. And so we're like, how do we grow this group of men that are out there that are sharing their experiences and like you being vulnerable and like, but you're also still masculine, and like we're kind of conditioned in this world and in society to sometimes say like that men that are in tune are sort of weak, or, you got to be like angry and to be like that caveman and strong, but that's not true.
No. Yeah. Well, listen, I'm in. I'm fully in.
Okay.
I'm fully in. And I can come in if you want and do like an online breathwork session for the community as like a gift. And we'll do it in a way that people can do it at home, and we'll do it safe, in a way that's safe, that kind of tackles some of the struggles that you might have felt with the breathwork. So I'd love to come and do that for you.
That would be so awesome. Let's do it. We're going to put that, when we get off, we'll stay in touch and organize that, because that's really, really cool. So thank you so much for coming on this episode of Bitch is a Bad Word. You are just an inspiration, and I've learned so much on this show. I can't wait to have you back. And I think that you have a lot more to unpack for us and help us and our besties on their own boundary setting, healing journeys, and understanding that, taking care of yourself and making space and setting boundaries is cutting off the supply that person is looking for.
Yeah, for sure.
So cool.
Yeah, look, I loved it. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I'm grateful to have these conversations and be part of the conversations, and just I want to give, if I can, there's a charity here in the UK. I mean, I'd imagine most of your listeners are States, right? But there's a charity here that I do a lot of stuff for called Mums in Need. So they support mums specifically who are experiencing post-separation abuse. And the two ladies that started it here, I just met them at one of my events, and they're doing some like amazing things off their own, off the bat themselves. And so yeah, I'd love to I don't know, maybe introduce you to them somehow and see if there's some way that you can support each other. So we do I have an online community. And so anybody that is using the Mums in Need charity gets free access to the community. And I'm just doing a day retreat in London in a month's time. And we've gave 2 of the spaces to 2 ladies from Mums in Need as well.
That's amazing. I would love to.
So yeah, they're doing some great stuff here. So yeah,
I would love to connect, because post-separation abuse is real. It is. It's in a lot of ways a new challenge, and maybe harder. I mean, so we're in full support of anybody who's out there, sharing the message and sharing that experience. I'm here in California. I have started a nonprofit called the BFF Alliance, and we find resources and connect women that have been through divorce, through abuse, going through divorce, and then the realities of hooking them up with the right people, the trauma-informed attorneys, the trauma-informed therapists, breath work, all the things that, and alternative ways of healing too, just using different methods of mental work as well. So let's connect. That'd be cool. We can support them as well, because we're growing our community. We're new, so we're gonna have some besties across the pond.
Yeah, it'd be good. Yeah, connecting people up, right? We stronger together and all that. So
I love it. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, well, Josh Connelly joined us today on Bitch is a Bad Word, and just such a pleasure speaking to you. I cannot wait to have you back. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode.
Thank you. Look forward to the next one.
Bitches being bad.